Hey there, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today I'll be taking a look at four short works by the artist Peony Gent, someone who's working mostly with like poetry in comics, poetics of forms, things like that. Obviously, this is like a little sub-genre of comics that I've really been enjoying over the last couple years, and Peony Gent is a great addition to my collection of this type of material. So this first one is called For Sarah. It's definitely pretty standard of Peony's work where there's like this typed poem going in here, and then the artwork around it is just giving like an impressionistic kind of view of the feel of the thing. Is how I'm seeing this work. The one thing I've noticed many times over these books is just the font that's chosen just doesn't set well for me. It looks very much like a poetry font in a book, and I guess that's kind of the intention. But there's such like the beautiful, loose, hand-drawn lines that I almost feel like hand lettering would go a little better, or at least making a font out of your own lettering or something. But these are also like really small print run, like self-published things, I'm sure. So that's a lot of extra effort. But there's a lot of really beautiful stuff going on. Like here, there's just this like little burst of color here, making the sun over top, or the moon over top of this house. These little bursts of like this orangish yellow and the pinks throughout. There's also some really beautiful parts here where there's been some like physical material painted on top of the pencil drawings, and so the interactions that you get that are really beautiful, and they just create like these atmospheric effects that you wouldn't normally be getting in a comic. These are more like painterly fine art type of effects that rely on layers and materiality and things, and it's represented pretty well in here. So really beautiful little book here. This poem For Sarah. It's like it says on the back, it's a comic about loss, so it's for a friend who has died. This next one is called Nottingham to London, and you can see that what it is it's half of a conversation by the public pianos in St. Pancras Station, and this is 2020. So another one of these ones where you have this typeset stuff, and then the almost like aspect to aspect, Scott McCloud type of aspect to aspect images, just showing the place, just showing what was going on in the place kind of loosely while the conversation was happening, is what I imagine. And again, there's some really beautiful material stuff going on in here, and some really beautiful, smart production choices as well. Like here, there are a bunch of dots that are in blue, and a bunch of dots that are like in this yellowy color, and they're done with a diffusion pattern, so you can see each dot, you can see the stochastic diffusion pattern, and instead of being like a color on there, it's actually dots, and so it has a presence on the page that's much more physical than if this would have been done with with the dots being so small you couldn't see them or something. So I really like those effects in here. It's a different type of color interactions throughout the book. The colors vibrate a little bit more that way, and yeah, some really really smart just production choices there, and things that are like kind of in the realm of some tricks that I'm thinking about, and it's really nice to see them like here where it's the yellow kind of scattered out. That's something that I saw in the book Merci, and I was planning on doing in Bound, and then I got to see someone else doing the same thing but with some color combinations in here like I was hoping to try, and so kind of confirming for me that some of the things I want to try are possible, and that's always really exciting. Then these larger two books I think are probably the more interesting of the two to me. This is called Eke It Out, Then Swallow It Whole. This is a piece that was first done when Peony was 27, and now at 30, Peony is going to redraw the book. I'm not sure what the original one looked like, but redraw it because Peony liked the text and just needed new art for it. I don't know how dramatically different the art is. This one's all done with these color pencil, maybe some watercolor or watercolor pencil in there, but it looks just like color pencil, and or maybe some pastels or something like where you're smearing the color around. Some really cool poetics of form in here, and some really cool just like the comic tricks that we wouldn't normally get in a comic just because they're not usually poetic like this, but particularly like this. Sometimes I feel drained dry. I feel drained dry that I used it up and now I'm done. And then when you're saying I used it up, it's like, well, what did I use up? Well, the well of pure openness, pure willingness, pure love, pure anything. So a way to have like a parenthetical, a visual parenthetical, or like you, instead of having a little asterisk with the note at the bottom, you could just do that visually. I think that's a really fun strategy in comics, and something we could see more of is taking some of these ideas from academic writing, and like, like doing an aside, doing a note, doing a reference to a book. How do we do those in a more compelling, visually arranged way than just following the book structure of putting at the bottom? Peony talks here about traveling back and forth for work. I've spent the past 10 years cultivating this flesh of mine and this brain of mine, adorning it and tattooing it and making it mine, and getting my thoughts to be strong ones that will pass my lips easily with minor worry about what others would think. The act of allowing yourself to become a blank, passive tool for instruction, a segment of an institution, putting yourself on the other side. But it's nice, too, to feel useful and to travel to and from with time to sit and read and think. So talking about experience becoming an educator, an instructor, I believe this is at the college level from what I took away from this. But then goes on to say, I never understood the desire to live like that, to not strive and search, but just sit. But there is something sweet and simple in it. And I actually find that, A, well written, but B, kind of sad in that, like, just because you have a job teaching, even if you're an adjunct and you're working part-time, doesn't mean that you're not striving and you're like just got a job and have given up the search and all of the desire to live and learn that comes with being an artist and a student. Shouldn't go away when you're a teacher. You should constantly be striving to learn from your students. You should constantly be striving to think of a better way to explain something. But I do see a lot of people that's like, well, I got the job and now I'm just going to do it. And yeah, I don't know. Like, that's kind of a sad way to look at teaching for me. There's also a big talk in this one about identity. I am me, I am I, Sylvia's cry, Elena's too. This is the basest, rawest, most plain want. I am not an island, borders flood and cannot hold, things fall apart. Give me a yam and some pride. I want an I, a me, a this to leash to. And this is just something I see a lot in, this is an artist who's now 30 as of, that doesn't have a date on the republication of this book, but they talk about COVID and stuff in here. So, 2021. So this is somebody who's now, 33? And like at 30 was really worrying about identity and finding an identity. And I see that so much in people of this age range. I know I've said it multiple times in videos, but it really bums me out because I know the philosophy that is being taught in general in education, like having a degree in philosophy myself, I'm pretty well aware, and I work in academia. I'm aware of the philosophies, and also just as someone who pays attention to culture, I'm aware of the kind of zeitgeist worldview on identity right now from a deep philosophical standpoint. And it's an unhealthy view of identity, and you see it a lot in people's art, especially in this age range, where they're either using their books to try and define their identity, or they're talking about it as a thing that they don't have a grasp on, a thing that they want, a thing they're trying to figure out. And I see that in my students too, these struggles they have where, you're already trying to find your voice at that age. And it just bums me out to see that the art world has, especially like this feels like art school coming into comics type of thing. You have someone who's obviously teaching in academies. They're pretty, I'm sure, like drenched in this worldview. And you just see it like messing with people's heads, and I'm sad to see that. So hopefully, with the kind of checking out of teaching and this worldview. This stuff isn't getting passed on too much. But anyways, still a really cool book. And there's a nice visual switch here between these really beautiful like pastel color pencil areas to the more pen and ink drawing style that we saw in some of the previous books. And it's presented as an interlude. So there's some structurally formal just in terms of how you arrange your project in this and how you design it that I think is interesting. But then saving the best for last and the biggest for last is the In a Plum, A Walk Through Thought by Peony Gent. This one is 2022, so the most recent one. I don't know if Peony's done anything since. I feel like I ordered these all at once, and this was all there was. This is formally just such a fascinating book. There's a lot of cool production stuff going on, printing these dots. It looks like they're halftone. It would have been better if they were printed actually as dots, but some really cool stuff with these watercolors going on. Just a lot of the visual stuff I really like in Peony Gent's artwork. But then a really cool structure and something that gets to another like production trick I would really like to see somebody try, or I would really like to try at some point, is to print on clear pages. Because what's going on in this book that's so cool is the page is seen like a surface in Photoshop or a surface on a desk where art just keeps getting piled on top. So you'll see as I flip through this that we have, and this is poetics of form stuff that I really love because you get formal, visually formal resonances throughout a book. So you have, obviously, this is the same page and this is the same two drawings here, and so they bear that spatial relationship to each other through the book. And that's what I mean by poetics of form, that as you flip it, there's these rhymes, these rhythms in the visuals in their actual like spot holder in the book. So you get this accumulation of things where you always see the previous page's worth of stuff, but then new things get added to it. And as those new things get added to it, that starts to change the meaning of the previous things. Like here you have, these are all just plants, but then in this one you have, well, now we have some of this larger plant. It, from this now becomes looking more like a tree that kind of runs up into this, is a bit tangent to that. So some really cool material ideas throughout, some really cool like how the book is structured ideas throughout. I also like this idea of this book as like an archival thing where there's a lot of screenshots that have been taken. So there's a conversation happening between the two sides, like what's on the computer and what's in the physical world. Like what am I looking at and what am I actually thinking? But there also starts to be visual overlaps as the book goes. So by the time you get to the end of the book, the mess has gone back like more page to page. And this is really someone working in a very fun mode of image making that is obviously set up by the computer, but you get some artists going back to like Picasso, Braque, Rauschenberg, artists who started to think about their paintings not as windows that were like faced up, so you're facing flat out of the world, but they started thinking about the workspace of the artist, like the desktop, and that was a precursor to the metaphor of the computer desktop as a thing that we could arrange our documents on. And even though it's like flipped up, we still have this kind of stacking metaphor of like the windows or file folders on top of each other and embedded. And so Peony Gent is really in this book working with that top down, like the camera view that you have down actually is like the best way in my mind to be thinking about this book, or as a computer window up, but this layered stack. And so that is totally fascinating to me. I think this could probably be printed on clear paper. Someone could do something like this on clear paper. You know, imagine that it was just like each one of these pages was one piece of paper, and then the clear just stacked. So as you flip through the book, you'd kind of unveil your way back to, it would kind of work in the opposite of this, I guess. Like you couldn't do it with this project, but it shows the possibility of creating meaning through layers. Introducing an actual physical y-axis into the book using clear could be really interesting. So a lot of cool stuff going on in these. I know a lot of people don't really get these type of books, don't enjoy them the same way I do. But really, like, first off, there's just visual enjoyment to it. The poetic aspect of it's not so much for me. But I think people who are really serious makers are missing out by not exposing themselves to some of these more formally experimental works, because you can take stuff from this and say, okay, like, now how do I apply this in a more narrative context where it is something that like a more general audience could pick up and read, but we're still like playing with the form of what comics can be. So I really, really love this type of avant-garde, especially poetics of form in comics, because it just opens the door for me. Like, I'm probably not going to do books like this, but I want to take tricks like this and do books that tell stories. And I think as a medium where we're not just thinking about how do I get good at drawing or whatever, but how do I get good at the medium of comics, books like these are really, really important. And from what I'm seeing, Peony Gent is just getting more sophisticated with each new book. Like, these are both 2020, and then this is 2021, 2022. So an artist who's only getting more sophisticated as they go. So really exciting. I hope Peony Gent has a bunch more to come in the future, and I really look forward to seeing it.
Easter.